On December 28, 1973, the Endangered Species Act was signed into law by President Nixon to protect plants, animals, and their habitats facing extinction. This federal law, enforced by the Fish and Wildlife Service and other government agencies, is 99% effective at preventing extinction. The Smithsonian Institution was put in charge of nominating threatened species for protection. In 1975, 3,000 species were listed as candidates, including the Penstemon grami, also known as Graham's beardtongue, and in 1983, the Penstemon scariosus, or the White River beardtongue. Neither of these plants has been listed despite numerous attempts and lawsuits on their behalf. One organization, Earth Justice, notes that the Fish and Wildlife Service did not propose listing these two plants until a lawsuit against the agency in 2003 led to a proposal to list the species on January 19, 2006. Less than a year after this proposal, the Fish and Wildlife Service withdrew the proposed rule. This infuriated conservationists, who in turn sued the Fish and Wildlife Service once again. According to the Office of the Federal Register, on December 16, 2008, Rocky Mountain Wild, Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, Utah Native Plant Society, and Colorado Native Plant Society filed a lawsuit once again against the Department of the Interior and the Fish and Wildlife Service. The court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs on June 9, 2011, reinstating the January 2006 proposed rule. Like a broken record, the Fish and Wildlife Service introduced another proposal to list the plants on August 6, 2013, and once again on August 6, 2014, the Fish and Wildlife Service withdrew its proposal, this time citing a voluntary Penstemon conservation agreement as the reason for withdrawal, though this is a half-hearted attempt to conserve these plants. Not only is it a voluntary-only agreement, only half of the protected lands are even considered for conservation. The other half are opened up to development by energy companies. Federal protection is desperately needed. On March 26, 2015, the conservation groups were back in court again with another lawsuit to gain federal protection through the Endangered Species Act to protect these two species of plants. Needless to say, this system is broken. The Graham and White River beardtongue need to be included in the Endangered Species Act to ensure their future survival. Both Graham's and White River beardtongue grow in the Green River Geological Formation in eastern Utah and northwestern Colorado. They grow on land that is made up exclusively of oil shale. In the two proposed rules to list the plants, the Fish and Wildlife Service has indicated that Graham's and White River beardtongues are vulnerable to the effects of energy development because their ranges overlap almost entirely with the oil shale and tar sands development areas, as well as ongoing traditional oil and gas drilling. The proposal by the Fish and Wildlife Service lists the threats associated with gas and oil companies, including the removal of soil and vegetation when unpaved roads, well pads, evaporation ponds, disposal pits, and pipelines are forced upon the plant's natural habitat. Expanding development increases roads and traffic, creating extra dust, inhibiting plant growth and reproduction. Not only do the roads add to the dust, they also fragment the populations of each species, limiting the effects of pollinators like bees, birds, and other small insects. Furthermore, extracting fossil fuels in Utah and Colorado does nothing to impede the carbon emissions, hindering the entire planet. Using fossil fuels to extract more fossil fuels is a reinforcing loop that exploits the natural resources and threatens both the Grahams and White River beardtongues with extinction. In the case of the beardtongues, a battle is raging within the system between the supporters of oil companies and those who support the plants. Those in favor of extracting oil ignore the fact that the entire habitat for these plants are exactly where the oil companies want to do business. This is a huge sustainability problem that has the potential to destroy two entire species of plants. There are several nested systems within the overall system of proposal rejection lawsuit repeat system. One is the litigation brought forth by the conservationists in reaction to the rejection by the Fish and Wildlife Service. This is a positive loop where each time the Fish and Wildlife Service rejects the proposal, the conservationists sue, and like on June 9, 2011, win their case. Another nested system seen here involves the energy companies. These companies provide jobs, keeping the residents of eastern Utah and western Colorado on their side, and against protecting anything that could threaten their income. This leads to weak, charlatan moves like the Penstemon Conservation Agreement that won approval from the people, local governments, and energy companies, though is a poor substitute for real protection under the Endangered Species Act. History is literally repeating itself, as profits are put above nature and the Fish and Wildlife Service chooses energy development over saving a species. Another system here is the exponentially escalating system of extracting and burning fossil fuels. The Green River Formation is made up of the largest known oil shale deposits in the world, ranging from an estimated 1.5 to 1.8 trillion barrels, or more than 3 times the amount in Saudi Arabia. Exploiting these resources continues the cycle of drilling and burning, where the planet's future is at stake. If this continues uncontrolled, then not only will humanity run out of fossil fuels, the climate may change drastically, leaving no chance for survival of any species, including mankind. There are several archetypical problems associated with the problems seen in the case of the Beardtongues: policy resistance, shifting the burden to the intervener, rule beating, and seeking the wrong goal. With so many companies competing for the valuable resources in the earth, very few think about the plants left in the wake of these businesses. Eventually, the Beardtongues will go extinct due to the mining of gas and oil and lack of protection from the Endangered Species Act. Policy resistance is seen when the agencies like the Fish and Wildlife Service disregard telltale signs that protection is needed for the Grams and White River Beardtongue. Despite the large body of evidence supporting listing these plants, these policies are resisted in favor of the harvesting of fossil fuels and providing jobs. Another system trap in this case is shifting the burden to the intervener. This country and the world are addicted to oil. Nothing will stop the government and energy companies from extracting fossil fuels from the land, especially a tiny plant that cannot defend itself. Rule beating is also clearly seen here, as the Fish and Wildlife Service simply will not list these species as endangered, despite the need that the Fish and Wildlife Service cites in their own reports. Clearly, higher powers are at play here that allow these agencies to write their own rules in plain view of the empirical evidence. There is also the trap of seeking the wrong goal. Oil supporters are only looking at the economical benefits of extracting resources from these lands, instead of focusing on preserving and conserving the habitat of 2 endangered plants. The wrong goal of extracting fossil fuels is being sought instead of protecting 2 threatened species. The 3 E's of sustainability are represented well within the problems associated with the endangerment of the Grams and White River Beardtongues. First are the dilemmas related to the social equity with this problem. Local governments, energy companies, and the people who live in these areas of the country are greatly impacted by whether or not these plants are listed. If the plants are listed as endangered, they will need to find oil and gas reserves elsewhere. It is a difficult decision of placing these plants above people, but is critical for their survival. There are environmental problems too, mainly that the habitat of these 2 species of plants will be destroyed if oil is extracted from the Green River Formation. This is the only place in the world where these plants live, and mining for oil in these locations will destroy the habitat and ultimately both species of plants. That, and the fact that extracting fossil fuels is a dirty source of energy, constantly emitting carbon, is only making things worse by slowly rising the temperature of the earth. Lastly, the entire debate about the White River and Grams Beardtongues revolves around the economics of the situation. The oil companies want to destroy this habitat because of the profits they believe are to be made from the oil shale. This gives them the backing of the people because of the jobs associated with mining in the area. There is a tight connection between the social aspect and economic aspect of this problem. People need to wake up and realize that money is not as important as a life form that may become extinct. In order to solve this problem, there needs to be a combination of actions to save both Grams and White River Beardtongues. One such leverage point is to reduce this country's dependence on fossil fuel by incorporating renewable sources of energy in place of oil. Solar, wind, and geothermal sources of energy are better for the environment, humans, and the Grams and White River Beardtongues. These sources of energy should be pursued in place of the dirty, outdated, non-renewable sources like oil. The next leverage point is so simple and obvious: list these 2 species of plants under the Endangered Species Act. This will help to protect an endangered species and prevent the destruction of their habitat by energy companies. It is simple to say, but not so simple to accomplish. As shown previously, 2 attempts to list the species as endangered have been thwarted despite all evidence suggesting the need for listing. In conclusion, the environment is more important than energy resources. The Grahams and White River Beardtongues need to be listed today.